Hey everybody, thanks a million for joining us today. My name is Ross Cranwell, CEO here of MilkVideo, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Anastasia from Shipbob. We are going to run through some ideas for video testimonials and how you can utilize those within ads and other types of distribution channels to drive conversions. So what I'm going to do is start by kind of going through some slides, but what we're going to do is jump in back and forth between myself and Anastasia, talking through these different elements of creating testimonials, running them on advertising platforms. So really excited to kind of to jump into that. So yeah, the agenda for today is, as I scoot over, just do a brief introduction to ourselves, myself and Anastasia, how to capture testimonials, video testimonials, predominantly remote video testimonials, how to edit those, and then test them across different ad creatives. At the end, we'll have some Q&A if you have anything that you want to ask about ads, about creating testimonials, about Shipbob. So yeah, I'm the CEO, as I mentioned, of MilkVideo from Dublin, based here in New York in Midtown Manhattan. Been working in marketing for about 15 years in China and New York, and started Milk with my co-founder Lenny about a year ago. So really excited to learn more about utilizing video ads. Anastasia, would love to learn about you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So my name is Anastasia, and I run paid media at Shipbob, an e-commerce fulfillment provider. So I have around more than 7 years, I think, of experience in paid media in varying B2B companies. And I run quite a few campaigns featuring customer testimonials. So I'm excited to share some intel on that today.
Brilliant. And where are you based
out
out of?
So I am based in Austin, Texas, but Shipbob is located out of Chicago, Illinois. So majority of the team is there, but our marketing team is spread out across the whole states.
Brilliant. Yeah. Anyone who's listening in, if you want to kind of share where you're based out of, yeah, I'm going to post in here. We're based in New York. If anyone else is in the New York region or anywhere else, feel free to post there. Kind of excited to see where everyone's calling in from. Super. So we'll move on, and then we'll kind of learn a little bit about your company, Shipbob. So tell us a little bit about Shipbob there.
Sweet. So Shipbob is a tech-enabled third-party logistics provider that fulfills e-commerce orders for direct-to-consumer brands or B2B brands. So if a company is at a point where they either don't have enough manpower, honestly, to fulfill their orders themselves, they would look to a 3PL provider to outsource that, and that would be us. And we work with a variety of businesses across the globe, so we have quite a few customers in the United States, but we also have more than 30 fulfillment centers on 3 continents. So we're present in the United Kingdom. We just opened a new location in Poland. We have an office in Australia and Canada and United States. So feel free to check us out if you're an e-commerce provider, an e-commerce company joining this webinar.
Wow. Yeah, so fully like multinational company, really,
Yes.
At this stage. Yeah, and I believe like you're a unicorn kind of status, so like, grown incredibly. That's cool. Thank you, Haley, sorry, and then Jordan from calling in from Chicago and Texas. Austin, Texas is brilliant to see you guys. And please feel free to drop any questions that you have for Anastasia or myself into the chat as we go through. We can stop at any point. So MilkVideo, yeah, what we do is we help go-to-market teams capitalize on their video and audio, whether it's a webinar or whether it's a demo recording or anything like that, to drive awareness, leads, and sales. So anyone can turn a long-form recording into a testimonial, like we're going to talk about today, or into highlights for paid and organic social. So first off, why testimonials? We'll keep this part short. I think everyone knows that testimonials are very important for building trust and credibility, to really help identify kind of where a product solves a problem. So people may know generally about a business, how they kind of solve a sort of generic issue. But with testimonials, the customer can pinpoint specific points where they really have solved an area that they're trying to fix. And then what we'll talk about today as well is how those testimonials really increase conversions, right? So along the sales funnel. So driving prospects to believe in your product at the start, or later on when they're looking to decide whether or not they want to purchase in a B2B or B2C instance. Stats show that 58% more likely to convert when there's a testimonial there. And you can be text testimonial, but video testimonials tend to be more powerful because you can actually see the person. And there's more attention paid by the viewer. Any thoughts there, Anastasia, about like testimonials and kind of how you view them at Shipbob?
Definitely. And like if you think about yourself as a consumer, you're, again, as you mentioned, Ross, like you're so much more likely to convert if you see somebody using your product, or a third party talking about how great the product is. So the same rules really apply to B2B. Hearing a testimonial from a customer is very powerful, even though it's broadcasted from the brand. Like it still gives you more credibility, as you said, more authenticity, and people are just more likely to respond. So I'm a huge fan of testimonials and using them. As long as you can find a really good testimonial that's going to be very, very impactful for your either organic or paid efforts. So it's about finding the right one, really, out of like all the millions of ones that you have.
Exactly. It's about finding the right one, or if you don't have any, how do you get started? And we'll kind of cover that today, because that's where people kind of get stuck in, like, how do I even find one of these? But we'll discuss that. And then, with remote testimonials, so video remote testimonials, especially now that everyone is working remotely, what are the benefits for doing remote versus on-site? Traditional on-site testimonials, high quality kind of productions are great. They can be quite expensive. An issue that Anastasia will talk about later on is that they can look great, but they can take a ton of time. And then, as Anastasia is a performance in the performance space, she needs those fast. And if it takes 2 months, that really impedes her ability to drive numbers and conversions. And then you're limited by, even though they're high production, that you're not going to get a huge volume of content. So, maybe you can talk about that, like the struggles you've had so far in generating testimonials when they're done at that kind of the agency level.
Definitely. So if you think in terms of like production timelines, in my experience, like creating a video with an agency takes anywhere from 3 weeks at the very least to however long it takes, like however many reviews you want to apply to that, right? Whereas if you're creating a testimonial with Milk, the process is a lot faster. So you can probably create something in, depending on your skills, like within like half an hour, and like be done and create a bunch of testimonials. And it's just that much more easier, let's say. And yes, the production value is slightly different, but that's like production value is not always what you're looking for in a performance world, right? Sometimes like the scrappiest thing can be the best thing too. And like not all of us are doing like a Super Bowl commercial every year, right? We don't need like those like $1 billion production budgets. We just need something that we can put out in the market, test fast, and move on, and like repeating the same process.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of issues with the speed of getting that stuff done. And then when it's created, it doesn't always perform at the level that you had expected. And then I know in a TikTok instance, and I'm sure across other channels, the more commercial the content, the lower it'll perform, because people are they can clearly see it's an advertisement, and they'll stay away from it. And so remote testimonials kind of allow, what we're about is in like performance marketer, is to move at speed and to allow anyone, a small team, large team, to be able to get this content quickly. And so HubSpot's research said that people prefer lower quality authentic video over high quality video that seems too scripted. Remote stuff allows you to get more, a testimonial a day if you want. You can edit and publish in the same day, which isn't possible with on-site. And then it's flexible. Customers can choose when they are filming and on their own devices without having to go to the office, which no one wants to do these days.
I'll probably add to this that it's also started being more common, right? In the last 2 years that we've been all in the remote space, like everybody's maybe a little bit more comfortable being on camera, like being in the Zoom
Yeah,
meetings all the
that's a
time.
really good
So,
point.
popping up your camera and recording a testimonial is a little bit easier than it was maybe a couple of years ago.
Yeah, people are putting themselves out a little bit more. Like I wouldn't have been doing these recordings before, and now I'm doing a few more. And yeah, it's fascinating. And people have, I think you said it yourself. You have multiple monitors and cameras in your apartment, which before you would never have. And you're just more willing to get out there. Yeah, I think it's a really good point. People are just, the last 2 years they've got more accustomed to doing that. Hey Holland, Bum, was it? Nice to meet you. Nice to have you on the line there. So the next step is kind of like, okay, so we know testimonials are strong. We know that we want to create video testimonials because they're very powerful. We want them at speed. So remote is a great option, especially with people being more open to it. Clients are a great option because people often, a lot of the people we speak to want to create tons of video. They just don't know where to start. Should I create a video myself? Should I record something? What's something interesting? What's the easiest place to start? Is customers. Customer testimonials is a very simple kind of type of content that anyone can kind of relate to. And it's not quite top of the funnel, not quite bottom of the funnel. And people are interested in watching them. So I think it makes that whole video strategy, getting that started a little bit more approachable, I think. So setting up the testimonial, we could go through a few best practices and learn how Shipbob do it. But some key best practices are obviously to identify happy customers. You don't want to be going after customers who haven't, you're not speaking to regularly. We don't have a great relationship with. Often there's a few that your team, your customer success team, or you as a leader of the company can kind of identify as happy clients and reach out to them. Anastasia made a great point that some people are scared kind of to reach out to customers, but often if they're that engaged and they love the product, they're willing to share a few minutes of their thoughts. Send out an invite is more commonly through email, or if you're in a Slack channel with them. What's important is to keep it kind of very clear what you're looking for, and then give them options on how they want to record the testimonial. Is it over Zoom? We schedule a time so that they can be guided, or is it they want to they record in their own time? And you can send them a recording link. Yeah, Anastasia, any thoughts about kind of getting customers involved and kind of getting them to provide that raw footage?
Definitely. In our process, I think it mirrors very much your best practices. So usually where it starts is we have a Net Promoter Score survey running within our product platform where a customer gets to grade us on like 1 to 10, and we all have a Slack channel where we can track how we're performing and what our customers think about us. And usually there would be quite a few customers who are very happy with us, who would live 10 out of 10 scores, and those would be the customers that our content marketing team is prioritizing for reaching out. So those are deemed very good prospects for our case studies, and that's when they're reaching out, is when we know we have a good score and in a good standing with them. And we're also checking with our account management team to, in merchant success, to make sure that it's a really good one to reach out to. And this is when the content marketing really does all the job, honestly, on my team, and product marketing. I rarely ever reach out to customers, so I have to steal their thunder here. So they reach out and they propose a case study, and then when they are conducting a case study call, they are recording those calls, right? So this is a really good platform for us to already get a recorded something that we can later repurpose in a testimonial, right? And they have a specific script that they're going after, a very specific amount of questions and line of questioning to the customers, right? Which allows you to kind of templatize the conversation and figure out what it is that you can repurpose as a testimonial later. Additionally, one thing that's not necessarily testimonials, but I always like to mention this, right? If you don't use Milk for customer testimonials, you can always use it to promote and repurpose other content that you have, right? So maybe any webinars like the one that we're doing today, chopping it up into different recordings and snippets. Maybe your company does the same thing, so you could use Milk for that. Or, if you were more targeted, you can find a stakeholder within your organization and have them record like a mini testimonial or a promotion for whatever it is that you're launching, a new product, a new product feature, a new announcement, whatnot, right? And like Milk is going to be really great for you to like take that and repurpose and scale it for distribution.
And again, those stakeholders, like people tend to kind of get stuck on where to start, right? So customers, the NPS score, that makes a ton of sense, working with the customer success team. Stakeholders internally, who would you kind of gravitate to first? Who'd be the lowest hanging fruit?
Oh, the chattiest person in the group, honestly. So I usually look to the sales folks, right? As a lot of them are more comfortable, like talking in general, being on camera. And they're just really good prospects to start with. You can also look potentially to product managers. They have to do and like run a ton of presentations all the time. So they could also be really good people to choose from. And then you can always tap into your leadership team, if they're willing and interested. So our CEO frequently records videos for us. I think our CMO would also be very glad to do that. He hosts all of our webinars. So there are some things, like some people on the C-suite who might be willing and like available to do that.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And all you have to do is to ask, right? Like, and if like the worst thing you can get is no, right? And then you can move on to the next person.
Exactly. And then, at the top there, I mentioned like 5 happy clients, and that's just an initial starting number, because if you reach out to one, you get rejected, you're like, okay, move on to the next. Like, you have to obviously kind of spread out a few different options, and hopefully 1 or 2 of them will respond. Remember, like if you get one testimonial or one internal stakeholder to record that content, if it's solid, like it can be used across ads, which we'll talk about later, and then across lots of other channels. So it's worth doing it. And it's a nice ask, it's not a difficult ask. You're also being respectful to, saying, listen, you're a great speaker, or you're a great customer. I would love to chat with you and get a couple of thoughts from you. So I think that a lot of people just don't know where to start. And I think starting small, but giving yourself some options there is great. Now, onto when you actually do schedule the call or send in the recording, or set up that raw footage, what are you actually going to ask them? What is going to work? If you have that time and you actually have their attention, what is the content that's going to convert best? So thinking ahead, okay, we've finished the content, what is going to work really well across advertising and social media? So how do you think about this?
So you need to ask questions. They're going to be really easy to answer, really, and that they're going to trigger some kind of emotional response within your customer that you're talking to. And then, like here on the slide, you can see some options, that you could ask your customer. Of course, replace an X with your company name, right? But like you kind of might need to probe your customer a little bit before you get into this testimonial conversation, right? Let them practice a little bit, ask those questions, see what they're going to answer, and then they might not give you the exact answer that you want to be used, that you would want to use in a testimonial later, right? And that's okay. It's always fine to go back and ask them to paraphrase it, or like to start it in a different fashion so you can later use it, right? It's like if you're asking like, why would you recommend the product? Like, why would you recommend this product? Like, why do you like it so much? And they start answering and being like, oh, like this product is really great. It's really fast. And like, like being very generic and like not specific at all. Like you could be like, like this is a great point. Could you go back to answering that question? Could you start your sentence with like this brand? Like I like this brand because, right? Like, and like it helps me solve this problem. For example, if we're talking about the problems that it helped me solve question. So just like go back and ask them to paraphrase it. Like it's gonna give them an ability to practice a little bit more. So you're going to end up with a more polished answer at the end, and like they're going to probably like get more comfortable in general answering that question too. Like, and again, like as Ross mentioned earlier, like maybe that's something that you could send them in advance so they had a time to think about what they're going to answer for that question, maybe create some bullet points, and like the answer is going to come out way easier.
And it's interesting because it's you're getting them to speak authentically, just as they want to explain your product, but then you're kind of getting them to kind of tweak it a little bit. So it's not scripted per se. It's just like kind of perfected, optimized for channels, because you know that people, when they are, whether they're on LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever channel it may be, you're going to capture, and especially, I know you're running YouTube advertising at the moment. You got to capture them. Capture that attention right at the start. You have that very minimal window, right?
Yes. And then, yeah, and that's the best practices that we're going to talk about in a second too. But like to add like a final point to this, right? Again, if they're not comfortable being together with you in a recorded call and like saying those things, that's absolutely fine as well, right? You can ask them to record that on your own time, again, as Ross mentioned in the earlier slides. So they can just get, like in the right place and in the right mood and the lightning and everything, and just like do it at their own pace without being necessarily pressured, right? Because we all have different tolerances to being on camera.
So how exactly, what are the steps that Shipbob runs for your testimonial? And this, we've covered some of this already, so you can kind of skim through the key points.
Sure. And I mean, these are some of the things, they're not like specific to Shipbob, like they're going to be this is like universal advice for if you're trying to capture a testimonial or create any sort of video that you would want to repurpose for advertising later, right? And creating a script is a very easy step for people who don't have like a good flow of mind, let's say, that can materialize out of their mouth. So creating a script of like those bullet points is going to be very helpful for them. And again, it's also very useful for people who are in leadership positions who might not necessarily have enough time to think about the script for themselves, and like you just like work with your content team or yourself to provide that. So again, it's a very valid strategy in my opinion. Now, if we're thinking about specifically ads, we need to start this testimonial with a brand name somewhere within the first 3 seconds, which means within the first 3 words, right? So if we're talking about Shipbob, like Shipbob needs to be like, I like Shipbob, word number 3, or Shipbob helps, like, or milk helps, right? Like all of those things, like it just needs to be in the first 3 words. So like at the very least, you'd get a brand mention out there. And that's what, all the social media platforms are preaching. Scripts also help you avoid any unsolicited ums, like even though that's totally natural and it's totally fine and they're probably going to slip in, and that's okay, right? It makes your speech authentic, and like people are going to trust you a little bit more if you're making those mistakes. And if you can slip, a very impactful metric or number into your testimonial, that's great. So like try to do that again if it's available. If it's not, anything that triggers a really strong emotional response. Next thing that I would be like, next point is basically like a performance marketer point. Length of the video is very important, right? Especially if you're trying to repurpose it for all the social media platforms that are there for advertising. 15 seconds is probably going to be the most versatile video that you can create, right? It's going to show up nicely in all of the Facebook placements. You can repurpose it for TikTok, YouTube, whatnot. Like 15 seconds is probably, I would say, like the golden length, right? It could be a little bit longer, and that's fine. But like, keep in mind that people don't really have long attention spans. Like I don't have a long attention span even when I'm looking at the video that I really like. So you need to capture that attention really fast and convey like everything that you want to convey in those 15 seconds or less than 30 seconds. So 15 to 30 is probably going to be your happy point. And then, next are probably like a pet peeve of mine when you're doing a testimonial, just making sure that you have good lighting and good sound quality, because those things are really hard to fix in editing, right? If you're doing this on Milk, or if you're doing like, God forbid, in another platform, like you need to like use like an Adobe like to polish the video, that's a poor testimonial to start with, right? So like, Ross has really good lighting right now. I'd say like my lighting is okay, basically, but I'm sitting in front of a window, and Ross's I think is also in a window space too. So like either do it like during the day, like please never ever do this at night. Like it's just not good at all. Or you can do it outside even, right? Like those videos also evoke a really nice response. Like I love seeing videos when people are walking outside and talking about something that they're clearly experts at. So love that overall feel. And then if your sound quality isn't great, like test it, like try to record a few things, like listen it back to it. I know it's really weird to listen to yourself. It's okay. We're all gonna sit through that experience one day. So if your audio isn't that great, you can always use headphones, which is what Ross is doing right now for this webinar, right? So just like hop that on in and record it. Practice is a really important tip. Like you can rarely record a good testimonial without practicing first. Like it's just not going to come out right. You're probably not going to like it. So run through it a couple of times, read it a couple of times. Another trick that I would use is if you have a script and you have dual monitors, position your script right above and or below the camera, depending on how your screens are arranged, and read from it, right? So it's easier for you to not forget things that you would want to mention, or just overall increase your comfort levels. And then if you can, if everything else that I mentioned wasn't enough, try to smile while you're doing a testimonial, because that's going to be create an emotional connection between you and whoever's watching the video, right, in the testimonial.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. There's a couple of key things, like the speed, the length of video, so the lighting, things like the simple things like the smile, and the practice part. How do you balance the authenticity? If you're trying to connect with your audience, and then the authenticity, and then the scripted part. How do you balance that out, do you think?
So I would start with if you must use a script, and you can't, whatever, again, comfort levels, just write a script in a way how you would talk it through, right? So don't write a script as a business email or a press release. Try to write it as conversation possible, so it would sound as the things that you would say in a real life, right? As opposed to the things that you would write. So write your script from a speaking standpoint, let's say.
Yeah.
And then another thing that again, comfort levels and everything, I would write the script for myself. I would read it out loud a couple of times, and then I would try to close it and recite what it is that I wanted to say in my own words, right?
Yeah.
Don't rely on the script too much if you can. If you can, just write it as conversational as possible.
Yeah, great. Okay, and I know a couple of these we've also covered as well, but the things to avoid from running these testimonials in preparation to promote it across channels, what are the things that you feel are the most important?
Well, I mean, first of all, right, people who are not comfortable being on camera, if you find that your customer isn't that happy about that opportunity, that's totally okay. There could be somebody else on their team who would be willing to do a testimonial. Or, at the very least, you can always ask them to record the audio and use their audio in combination with their still shot to produce a testimonial. But at best, try to figure out who's going to be more or less comfortable doing that, and who's okay being distributed later too, right? If you're doing a promotion on that. A personal no, unless you're a B2C brand selling this, to me, is hats and sunglasses. No matter where you're recording this, even if you're recording this outside, and it's super bright, it's still going to give a shade over your first half of the face, or top half of the face, right? Even if I cover it here, you can barely see my eyes, which means you can't really connect with whoever is making a testimonial, or speaking about your product. So if you're providing instructions to anybody, ask no hats and sunglasses, right? Of course, unless if it's religious wear, this is totally fine. But caps, anything that covers your eyes, I think it's just a no. And I actually have stats from my previous experience to validate that. We ran a promotional campaigns in one of my previous jobs, and we were testing basically somebody recording a product promotion from their home. The guy had a hat on versus a guy who was recording it outside, didn't have a hat on. And the conversion, click-through rates for those videos were vastly different. So I think the difference was 3 to 5 times higher for the guy who was recording outside and didn't have a hat on. So data validates the no hat rule. And then poor audio, right? We covered on the audio before. Audio is going to be really hard to fix. You really can't fix it anyhow. So making sure that the client can speak loud, if they can, loud basically, I guess, covers it. And that the computer or the phone picks it up. Just make sure that the audio quality is there, because you can fix that.
Yeah. So those are very clear things to avoid, and very easy to kind of work on. But if a piece of content isn't like visually that compelling, has some issues, some ums and ahs, at the end of it, there are ways that you can still kind of use it. Going back to our thing around authenticity of content, you see the types of content, the short form content on channels like TikTok now. It's very rough and not polished, but still does really well, whether it's organic or paid. So editing the footage, once you get the raw footage, so the key thing is, obviously, if you're a brand, you need to touch it up. This is one of our clients, Lytics. They touched up the recording. You can see that the recording is kind of basic, but then they added in kind of like a header and then the captions below, animated captions. Very simple structure, one that's very popular across B2B channels like LinkedIn and Twitter. But it works. It's in that middle range where it's not like ridiculously polished, but it's not basic. People can read it. The captions are there so that when their audio is off, that they can still engage in it. And you can immediately know, okay, how Google Cloud and Lytics work together. I get what this is about. So it's very clean, simple, and to the point. And the speed at which this can be generated is, again, created and edited within the day, rather than within a couple of months waiting for an agency. And then once you have that, then being able to create multiple variants, right, is really key from an ads perspective, or from just a general marketing perspective. So if you are trying to go after a couple of channels, you want to split test the size, or the title, or the part that the interview, the question, maybe it's one question versus another question, seeing what resonates. It can make a huge impact, and I imagine, Anastasia, you see a lot of, like, this is kind of your bread and butter, right? Being able to split test and kind of see what works and what doesn't work. And this is an example here of one that the Shipbob did for utilizing Milk, and creating a square and then a TikTok. So maybe you can talk about how you think about like multiple variations.
Sure. And, like, variations in the advertising world could be anything, right? As Ross, you mentioned, like, if you have multiple testimonials of customers answering different questions, that's a variation, right? So it could be the same design, but it would be a different answer to the question, and that's your variation. In our case, we didn't really have an alternate answer to the question. So the video that you're seeing here is the only video that we've got. So the way that I would go around creating different variations for this is to play with the color, to play with the positioning of the title, to play with the treatment of the headshot. And that's a trick that Ross showed me actually the first time we spoke. So you could you could keep the video as is. You could put it in a nice, like a round headshot or a square headshot, and you could just play around with how this data is represented. And like for the advertising platform, like that one small change is going to count, right? Like whether you're changing, let's say, like a different shade of background, if you think that's going to be impactful enough, if you switch out the CTA, if you switch out the text, like this is going to be more than enough, right? And for any advertising platform, you're going to need about 3 to 4 variations to run at the same time. And, tweaking those small things is going to give you enough variations. And again, like think about like having 3 or 4 answers to the different questions, like that multiplied by all the design changes you could make could give you more than enough content to test, like for, I don't know, half a year, probably, depending on how creative
and that's
you are.
one thing that's kind of key to your job, right? Is having enough creatives, like, because you can manage the where you're promoting it and distributing it, but you can't manage the creatives, like in terms of like you're not doing the customer testimonials yourself, someone else, the content marketing team or whatever. But this, by doing all these variations, you then like are turning one interview here into this huge volume of content. So
and that's the main challenge that I find too. Like, sorry to interrupt you, but like with TikTok, like I spoke to the TikTok rep a couple of months ago, and they told me like, "Hey, you guys actually need to switch out your creative every 3 weeks." And I was like, "What?" Like I barely have enough creative for like one campaign to run, and you're telling me I need to figure out how to create multiple variations and I have the campaign stretch. Like if I want the campaign to run for, like as an always on campaign, I need to switch it out every 3 weeks. Like, oh my God, where do I come up with the content? Basically, right? And like, I think if you have those testimonials and you have different length of testimonials, you can chop them up. Like you can, like we talked about, change CTs, change colors, change positions, and just they'll give you, like they'll stretch your creative for months to come. And like with B2B companies, I feel like that's important because again, not every B2B company has enough budget for videographer, right? like to figure, like sometimes like we don't even have a designer at Shipbob, right?
Yeah.
We have like very talented people who know how to use Canva really well, but you know, like that's the extent of it. So figuring out like how you can create a lot out of nothing, basically, is a skill in performance marketing.
And this is why it's so important, you know, why we covered it at the start, like when thinking about the right questions. If you go in, set up this interview, create the wrong questions, and then it's like, great, we have the right person, it looks great, visually it's fantastic, but if she doesn't say anything that's really compelling about why she chooses our business, then you're just like, I'm going to go back to square one. So getting that initial piece is so key because it can set you up for 6 months, like you said. Yes. But if the questions were wrong at the start, then you can, you know, you'll just have to go back and ask for another one or repurpose some other type of content. But this is like a clear, you know that this is a low-hanging fruit. You know that this will work. You just have to test what is it, right? The messaging and the CTAs and the colors and the channels and all those variations.
Definitely.
So we'll run through a couple of examples and kind of some of the results that Anastasia has seen, and actually also from one of our other clients. So first off is this example with the caker. So maybe you can talk through some of the results there, the CTR and the conversions and such.
Sure thing. So we used this video that you guys see on the left-hand side to promote our multi-channel fulfillment product offering that we launched last year. It's a new product offering for us. The market is very interesting to where it's catering primarily to the B2B companies who are working with, you know, like some of the larger marketplaces, like I don't know, selling like on Target or Nordstrom or like Neiman Marcus and things like that. So it's like very specific audience. And I say all of this like to preface like the performance stats that you're seeing on this slide, right? So it's a very specific product. It's a very small, what I would say, like chunk of people that would respond well to that. And we ran this campaign on TikTok, right? So we're trying to like basically like find the channel where we have like the least of odds to like get a conversion for this message. And you know what we did with this campaign, we had a few creative options. So we had the MilkVideo testimonial that we created. Of course, it's not in square, it's in like a long horizontal format that TikTok likes. We created a bunch of Canva options. I feel like I created them out of desperation and like, why not test it? So they were very text-based, and we had an agency almost an agency level created format that we were running alongside each other. So we had 3 options basically: Milk, agency, and Canva. And what we found is that the platform preferred the Milk format the best, right? Out of all the things that we put it out in front of it. We saw a very strong click-through rate for this creative piece. It was, again, way better than Canva or agency level production. And yes, you're going to see here a 55% click-through rate versus like 0.53% conversion rate. But if you're in performance marketing, you know that, you know, once a platform picks a creative that it likes, it starts to deliver it more. So your performance is kind of diluted a little bit compared to the other assets the platform didn't like as much, right? So think about this like 0.55% conversion rate in a sense of it got way more impressions and got way more clicks, right? So it diluted over time, but overall it was a way more successful piece of creative than the other ones that we had in the mix. And to add to this, right, this creative drove conversions for us, which is a win. And I'm very generous with my performance stats for TikTok these days, as if we're, you know, trying to ease our way into it. So if it can drive a conversion, it's a success for me. And that was the only piece that drove conversions for that particular campaign and that particular messaging. So big win.
Yeah, it's amazing. I imagine, you know, before I would never have thought TikTok would have been a great channel for B2B, and it's amazing that you're testing there, that you actually saw those results. It seems like it's an untapped kind of channel right now. A lot of companies are obviously start B2B, start with LinkedIn, Twitter, which are also, which are very targeted towards title and things like that. But why did you try TikTok?
I strongly believe that our prospects are hanging out on TikTok, honestly. As a user, like I started the journey like as a user, figuring out like what the platform is, and of course, like it all happened when quarantine started, so it's been my hobby number two since then. And you see a lot of e-commerce businesses who have their presence on TikTok organically. You see a lot of things that they do behind the scenes. So you see like a lot of like businesses who are like, oh, like we got an order, like we're gonna pack the order like with you guys. Like, oh, they asked we include like this and this, right? And like again, people engage really well with those behind the scenes shots. So e-commerce businesses are there. They're hanging out on TikTok, right? And like it's about figuring out like what's the right way to target them and what's the right message to serve them to get them interested. And of course, the intent is very different on TikTok than it would be on any of the other of the social channels. But I still think it's a very, very important awareness channel for B2B, at least it is for us.
Yeah, that's great. So Steve asked a question there about, Steve Klein, thank you for the question about, are these running on Facebook? And you have a second question, which I'll get to in a second. But are these running on Facebook? You're looking for some examples of companies running ads. So actually, I'll jump to this part, and then I'll get to your second part of your question. But this ad here from one of our clients, Rupa Health, is one that they started out running on Facebook, and this is a testimonial they ran and across Facebook and a few other channels, but predominantly Facebook, and they saw fantastic kind of returns. So they ran it against some other image ads, which were costing them $1.43 cost per click, and then with these video ads, they're around 82 cents. And actually, the stats are shown directly the dashboard, so it's 100% true. That they kindly showed us here. That they actually performed really, really well. And what they loved about this was the ability to create like this testimonial at speed, and then on Facebook they performed really well. Anastasia, you didn't run those ads on Facebook yourself, right?
We did, yeah. So the results were very different on Facebook, honestly, and I think Ross, we talked about it before this meeting. Or this webinar, right? On Facebook, the audience really preferred the more polished version that our agency produced, and it's, it is what it is. Like, there's nothing I can do like to speak against the data. And it was very interesting to see. In terms of, are these ads running right now? They're not running right now. We have a different campaign that we switched out to focus more on the educational parts. And to Steve's question, whether TikTok has an ad library similar to Facebook's, it does. I have a link. I don't know how I can share this, honestly.
Yeah, you can post that in there. Yeah. I spoke to a TikTok, one of a team member there at TikTok, and they shared that with
maybe Ross, you can, because I don't think I'm signed up for this thing, so I can share.
Steve, we'll find that, and then
like there are a lot of things like A, you can use this library, right? Like B, if you're a user, like go and check it out in your own feed, and then there is a hidden feature within like your TikTok settings where you can basically judge someone else's ads on like a basis. If you guys Google that, like there's like a special like place in your settings that you can select to just view other ads.
I found the link there, so I posted there for you, Steve. It's fascinating.
It's not going to be as robust as like the Facebook tool is, right? So you can't select a specific advertiser, but I mean, I feel like it's a professional secret or not so secret. If it's running on Facebook, it could be running on TikTok as well. And I think the latest trends are if it performs well on TikTok, it translates really well to Facebook. So like for those brands who are big on TikTok, it's very likely they're using similar creative on their Facebook campaigns.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me go to the next slide. So this is the third and final example here from Shipbob, and this is less of a customer testimonial, more of an internal interview, right, Anastasia?
Yes, this is actually, so we released a winter product release a few weeks ago at Shipbob, and we asked our CEO, Drew, to record a little promotional video announcing that, hey, this winter release is live, and here's what it covers, right? Here are all the product features that can help delight your customers no matter where they shop. And we use this ad as in our advertising campaigns, right? This is a more and it's a different campaign type than the one that we ran for the Caker case study, because Caker case study was basically prospecting, right? So you're going out there and just trying to find your customers, whereas something like that we would usually use in the retargeting campaign. So it's going very involving, talking to the customers who already know about us and know about our features. And of course, it applies to prospecting audiences too, but our primary audience was retargeting for this particular campaign. And what we found, that this creative type, it was basically cheaper for us across the board, right? No matter what metric you're looking at here, if you're focusing on the video metrics, it's anywhere from 3 to 10 times cheaper for cost per 3 seconds or through play for us, and 2.5 times cheaper in terms of CPM. And of course, look at this CPM and be like, oh my God, this is a huge CPM. Yes, it is a huge CPM, but we're in B2B, so everybody should be more or less accustomed to seeing big numbers in terms of CPM.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, we tend to see, as the lowest hanging fruit for types of content, types of video content to create as a starting point is, yes, customer testimonials, but then, that internal recording. If you have someone, go back to our initial kind of comments, someone who speaks well, or your CEO or C-level, and this is a great example of that. And even from that little GIF, you can just see that it's engaging. There's a few different elements. There's a nice branding. There's the focus on the speaker, and then the captions there. So it's very clean. Great. Okay, so we're just about to wrap up. Just to recap. 1 second. Here we go. So maybe Anastasia, if you want to recap there, just kind of high level, what you would like to kind of share with everybody.
Sure. I don't know if I'm the best person to give this advice, but the first advice is to do not be afraid to work with customers, right? And work in the fashion that would make it a beneficial for both of you, right? In terms of testimonials, all the tricks that we talked about, providing them a script, asking them to paraphrase the same sentence, starting with a different starter, basically. So just don't be afraid to ask. Like I said, the worst thing you can hear back is no, and that's totally okay. And then you can move on to another customer, but don't be afraid. Chances are all you need to do is ask, right? When you get the testimonial, you can work very fast to create a lot of variations for you to test in performance marketing or even in organic social posts. And Milk, oh my God, Milk allows you to do this really fast, right? So you can create multiple variations for whether it is your organic or paid campaigns, and just get it rolling within a day probably. And then building those variations and testing those across the platforms and going back to it, right? So that's the basis of performance marketing. You just build something, you test it fast, you figure out what works, and you go back to the drawing board. And chances are you're going to have a lot of options to choose from. And just don't be afraid, start somewhere, I guess, because if you start with a good testimonial, start with a couple of colors from your brand book and just see where it takes you.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Super. Well, if you have any questions, please drop them into the channel. One last point, we are at MilkVideo running a Slack sprint. So we know that creating video and editing it, repurposing it can be quite challenging. So we're building out a cohort in Slack. So you can, if you have a plan to create any type of video or create some content for ads or for social, you can join a Slack group. We'll work together as a group of marketers to create one unique piece of creative and kind of see how it performs and share those results as you go along. If you're interested, just email me, Ross at MilkVideo, and kind of interest to see, trying to push people to, we know everyone knows that videos work, everyone knows that it works across ads, but it can be quite hard to get started, like we mentioned, and even kind of getting through some of the friction points. So we're trying to do it as a team. So if interested, just message me. And Anastasia, thank you very much for this. It was brilliant, really insightful insight into how you think about ads, how you think about content, about Shipbob. Really, really exciting. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.